The knife went in at 11:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I had just checked my phone, cursing the Busan night bus for running late again. I was standing in the narrow alley behind Gwangali Beach, a shortcut I had taken every night for 6 months when I heard it. Not a scream. Screams are loud, dramatic, the kind of thing that splits a crowd. This was worse. This was a wet sound, the kind that settles in your stomach and doesn't leave. I pressed my back against the cold wall, every survival instinct my mother had ever drilled into me firing at once. Zola, do not move. Do not breathe. You are a black woman alone in a foreign country at midnight. You do not investigate sounds in dark alleys. My mother's voice, always arriving too late. Because I had already turned the corner. There were 4 of them, 3 standing, 1 on the ground. The man on the ground was trying, and failing, to hold his side together with both hands. Even in the weak orange glow of the single street lamp, I could see the blood was spreading too fast, soaking through what had once been an expensive white shirt. The 3 standing men were not panicking. That was the detail that frightened me most. Panicked men are unpredictable but containable. Calm men with weapons are something else entirely. The tallest one, sharp jaw, silver rings on every finger, noticed me first. He said something in Korean. I only caught one word. Ko uputi koenus, Africa. I should have run. Instead, my hands, my treacherous, nursing school-trained hands, were already reaching into my bag. He's going into hypovolemic shock, I heard myself say. My voice sounded impossibly steady for a woman whose knees were shaking. If you don't compress that wound in the next 90 seconds, your boss dies in this alley. Silence. The tallest man stepped toward me. His hand moved to something at his hip. I'm a nurse. I held up both palms. My ID badge from Busan General Hospital was still clipped to my lanyard. I'd done a double shift and hadn't even made it home yet. I don't care who he is or what happened here, but I will not watch someone bleed out on a street. Move. I don't know what it was, the badge, the accent, the sheer absurdity of a 54 Ghanaian woman giving orders, but the tallest man stepped aside. I dropped to my knees beside the man on the ground. His eyes found mine immediately, and that was when I made my second mistake of the evening. I looked back. He was somewhere in his mid-30s, with the kind of face that must have, at some point before whatever life had carved into it, been almost gentle. High cheekbones, a jaw set so hard it looked sculpted. A fine scar ran from his left temple down to the corner of his mouth, old, deliberate. His eyes were very dark and completely alert, which told me the shock hadn't fully taken him yet, but it was coming. "What's your name?" I asked. Standard trauma protocol, keep them talking, keep them here. His lips barely moved. "Siak." "Okay, Siak." I pressed my folded scarf, my good cashmere scarf, the one my aunt sent from Accra, directly onto the wound. He didn't make a sound. "My name is Zola. I'm going to be very honest with you, this is bad, but you're not going to die tonight." Something shifted in his expression. I couldn't name it then. "You don't know that," he said. His English was quiet and precise, each word placed like a chess piece. "I know it," I said firmly, pressing harder, "because I won't let you." It took 11 minutes. Improvised compression, elevation, fragments of gauze from the small emergency kit I'd started carrying after my 3rd month in Korea. Call it a nurse's paranoia. By the time the black cars arrived, sleek, silent, 3 of them Siak's breathing had steadied. The tallest man with the silver rings crouched beside me. Up close, I could see a small tattoo below his left ear, a dragon eating its own tail. "You saved him," he said. It wasn't gratitude, it was an assessment. "He needs a hospital," I said. "Proper surgery, I've only." "No hospital, flat, final." I opened my mouth. "No hospital." He looked at me for a long moment. Then, "You will come with us." And before I could remind anyone that I had rights, that I was a foreign national, that this was technically kidnapping, Siak's hand closed around my wrist. His grip was weak from blood loss. I could have broken it easily. I didn't. "Please," he said. Just that. One word, barely audible, from a man who I would later learn had not used that word in 11 years. God help me, I got in the car. They took me to a house that wasn't supposed to exist. I know that sounds impossible, but that is the only way I can describe it. Tucked into the hills above Busan, behind 3 separate gates and a stretch of road that doesn't appear on any map I've ever found, was a compound that looked, from the outside, like a traditional Korean estate. Dark, curved roof lines, stone lanterns, manicured trees bent artfully by generations of wind. Inside, it was something else. The tallest man, whose name I learned was Ryu Chansu, head of security and apparently the most terrifying person in any room he entered, led me through corridors that smelled of sandalwood and something older, something that lives in the walls of places where important and terrible things have happened. A doctor was already there when we arrived. Small, efficient, ageless in the way of people who have trained themselves out of all expression. He took one look at my improvised compression, looked at me, then back at Seok, and said something rapid in Korean that made Ryu Chansu make a sound very close to surprise. Later, I would find out he had said, "Whoever stopped this bleeding bought him 2 more hours, maybe more." They put me in a room. It was a beautiful room, silk bedding the color of celadon, a window overlooking a garden where a single lantern swayed. But a beautiful cage is still a cage, and I was not naive. I sat on the edge of the bed with my blood-stained hands in my lap, and I thought about my apartment, my 3 houseplants, my best friend Adoma back in Accra who would be trying to video call me in approximately 4 hours. Ryu Chansu appeared in the doorway. He didn't knock. "You will stay," he said, "until he decides." "Decides what?" "What to do with you." I stared at him. I saved his life. "Yes," he said it as though this was precisely the problem. He left. I heard the lock turn. I did not sleep. Instead, I sat with my back against the headboard and I thought methodically, the way my mother had taught me to think when afraid, about what I knew. I was a nurse from Accra, Ghana, 29 years old, 3 years into a work contract at Busan General. I had stumbled into something I was not meant to see. The man I had saved was clearly someone whose business happened in alleys at midnight, whose employees didn't flinch at knife wounds, whose house sat behind gates that cost more than my entire apartment building. I thought about the way he had said please. "Stop thinking about that, Zola." At 4 a.m., the door opened again. It was Ryu Chansu. It was a young woman, perhaps 19, with a blunt fringe and enormous dark eyes, carrying a tray. Hot doenjang jjigae, a small bowl of rice, a glass of cold barley tea. She set it down on the low table by the window and looked at me with an expression I recognized. She was as frightened as I was, and she was far better at hiding it. "He wants to see you," she whispered in careful English. "In the morning, when you are ready." She paused. "He said to tell you you are a guest, not a prisoner." I looked at the locked door. She followed my gaze, had the grace to look ashamed. Then she left. I ate every drop of that soup, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I had learned, very young, that you eat when food is offered, because you do not always know when the next meal comes. He was sitting in a wheelchair when they brought me to him the next morning, which I had not expected. It made him, somehow, more frightening, not less. There is something uniquely unsettling about a powerful man reduced to stillness, because you feel acutely that the stillness is borrowed and temporary. The room was a study. Floor-to-ceiling shelves of books, Korean, Japanese, English, a few in what looked like Russian. A single ink painting of mountains. No photographs, no photographs. I noted that. People without photographs on their walls are people who have decided not to be known. Seok was dressed simply, dark shirt, loose trousers. His wound had been dressed properly. His color was better. His eyes, if anything, were sharper than they had been in the alley, which I found quietly alarming. He looked at me for what felt like a full minute without speaking. I refused to be the one to break it. I had dealt with intimidating consultants and senior surgeons who used silence as a scalpel. I folded my hands and waited. "Zola," he said finally. My name in his mouth, he pronounced the O long like he had been practicing it. Is that Ghanaian? Zulu, actually. My mother's grandmother was South African. I paused. You speak very good English. Columbia University, he said. 2 years, long time ago. Something flickered at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, not quite anything nameable. You are a nurse. I am, but not afraid of blood. I'm a nurse, I repeated. This time, the flicker became something more definite. Sit down, Zola. I sat. I owe you my life, he said. It was declarative, not emotional, a fact being entered into a ledger. That is not a small thing. In my world, he paused, choosing debts of this kind carry weight. I don't want anything from you, I said. I want to go home. I know. He folded his hands. They were scarred at the knuckles, not the random scars of someone who'd had bad luck, but the deliberate scars of someone who had made bad luck for other people. And I will consider it. Consider it? Someone tried to kill me last night, he said calmly. They used a man who works for me, a man I trusted for 6 years. He let that land. They know my route, my schedule, possibly this location. His eyes steady on mine. Until I find who sent them, I cannot move freely, and anyone who was in that alley is a loose thread. My mouth went dry. I didn't see anything. You saw enough. He said it without menace, which was somehow worse. I am not going to hurt you, Zola. I want to be clear about that. He seemed to mean it, and I hated how much I wanted to believe him. But I need you where I can see you, temporarily. How temporary is temporarily? He looked at the window. Outside, 2 men in dark clothing moved through the garden with the silence of people trained to be shadows. Days, he said. A week at most. I have patience. Ryu Chansu will arrange a message to your hospital. You can't just, I stopped, breathed. What exactly do you want from me while I'm here? He was quiet for a moment, then almost carefully, to talk. Of all the answers I'd braced for, it wasn't that one. I haven't spoken to anyone outside my organization in, he stopped, recalibrated. You're not from here, you don't know what I am, what I've done, not really. And yet you looked at me in that alley and the first thing you said was, he paused. His voice, for the first time, changed register just slightly, just enough. I will not watch someone bleed out on a street. He said my own words back to me quietly, like they were a code he was still working out. I haven't heard someone speak to me like that, he said, in a very long time. The room was very still. Don't, I told myself. Do not feel sorry for this man. Do not let him make you feel. I'll need access to my phone, I said. To call my friend, she'll worry. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded to someone behind me, Ryu Chansu, stationed at the door like a piece of lethal furniture. One call, monitored. Monitored, I repeated flatly. I trust carefully, he said, and slowly. How's that working out for you? I gestured at his wound. This time, he actually smiled. It transformed his face so completely and so briefly that if I had blinked, I would have missed it. I did not blink. 5 days. That is how long it took for the compound to stop feeling like a trap and start feeling like something I didn't have a clean word for. I won't dress it up in sentiment. I was still, technically, a captive. I couldn't leave without escort. My phone calls were listened to. Ryu Chansu watched me with the focused suspicion of a man whose entire career was made of suspicion. And twice, men arrived at the compound whose presence made every employee in the building become very quiet and very still, the way animals go still before a storm. But in between all of that, there were the mornings. Siak was healing faster than I had any right to expect. He was, as I was learning, relentlessly disciplined about things that served him. He refused pain medication beyond the first day. He completed the physiotherapy exercises I designed with the grim focus of someone settling a debt. And every morning, once the doctor had come and gone, we talked. He asked about Ghana first, not the generic questions that foreigners ask, not the safari and poverty questions that made my teeth clench. He asked about the Atlantic, about the way it looked different from the Gulf of Guinea than from anywhere else. He asked about my mother, who was a teacher. He asked about why I had come to Korea. I told him about the nursing scholarship, about arriving in Busan in February and not knowing a single word of Korean, about the first time I ate sundae from a street cart and called a doma immediately to describe it in full detail. He listened the way very few people listen, completely, without preparing his next sentence, without looking anywhere but at me. In return, I learned things in fragments. He had been 12 when his father, the previous head of the Heesan organization, the network that operated across Busan's port trades, whose reach I was only beginning to understand, had died. Not peacefully. He had been sent away, a school in Seoul, then Colombia. Then brought back to a crown he'd never wanted and had worn for 11 years with a ferocity that came. I was starting to understand, not from love of power, but from the terror of what would happen to the people beneath him if he showed weakness. "You could have chosen differently," I said one morning. We were sitting in the garden, he in his wheelchair, me on a low stone bench, the smell of pine and cold sea in the air. "You could have walked away." "No, simple, absolute." "Why?" He looked at the mountain visible over the eastern wall. "Because walking away only works if someone else is strong enough to hold what you leave behind. If you walk away from a burning building, someone else burns." That's a very convenient justification for staying in a burning building. "Yes," he said quietly, "it is." There was a pause. Below us, a bird moved through the lower garden. "You said you needed to find who ordered the attack," I said carefully. "Have you?" His face changed. The shutters came down professionally, completely. "Getting closer." "Ryu Chansu." "He is loyal." "Is he the one who?" "Don't," he said, quietly, but it closed the door completely. "There are things I can't." He stopped, tried again. "There are parts of this world I don't want you near, Zola, not because you can't handle them, because once you know them, they follow you." I looked at him. They already follow me. I was in that alley. A long silence. 7 days, he said finally. "I need 7 days from now. Then I will have the answer, and then," he looked at me steadily, "I will take you home myself." "I can get a taxi." "I will take you home myself," he repeated, and the way he said it was not controlling. It was something else. Something I recognized and tried immediately to catalog as something less dangerous than what it was. "Siak," I said his name carefully. "What is this?" He looked at the mountain again for a long time. "I don't know," he said, and for the first time in 5 days, I believed he was telling me the absolute truth about something. That night, I lay in my Celadon room, and I had an argument with myself that lasted until 2 a.m. He is a criminal, Zola. He has never lied to you. He runs an organization that. He said, "Please." I fell asleep, losing the argument. At 3:15 a.m., I was woken by the sound of 3 gunshots. I was under the bed before I was fully awake, muscle memory from a childhood, in Accra during years that didn't bear nomming. My body making decisions my mind was still catching up to. Silence, then footsteps, fast, purposeful, voices in Korean, a sound of glass. My door burst open. Ryu Chansu. He looked for the first time in 6 days, genuinely frightened. And that, more than anything, shot pure adrenaline through every vein I had. "Come," he said, "now." "What's happening?" "Now." I came. He moved me through the house at a pace that was almost running, through corridors I hadn't seen before, down a staircase into what turned out to be a subterranean passage that smelled of old stone and salt air. I could hear shouting from somewhere above. More than one voice. Organized. This wasn't random, this was an operation, planned and executing. "Siak," I said. "He is managing it," Ryu Chansu said, which told me nothing and everything. "He's injured." "He is managing it." He stopped at a heavy door, looked at me with an expression I can only describe as complicated. "The man who ordered the attack, it was confirmed 2 hours ago." "Who?" "Someone inside." He said it quietly, like a stone being dropped into deep water. "Someone who knew that the only way to take Siak down permanently was to do it from close range. They have been inside for 3 years. Do you know who? Yes, his face was stone. I have always known who. I hoped I was wrong. He opened the door. Beyond it was a tunnel lit by low floor-level lights, and at the end of it, far ahead, a rectangle of night sky, stars, cold sea air. This leads to the lower road, he said. There is a car. The driver is mine, completely mine. I would trust him with my own children. He will take you to a hotel near the hospital. Your belongings, he reached inside his jacket and handed me an envelope, are there. Enough for a month. I stared at him. What about? Go, Zola. I'm not leaving until I know he's. Nurse, he said the word with enormous deliberateness. You have already done more than anyone should have asked of you. He knows that. I know that. His jaw tightened. And he would not forgive me if something happened to you inside these walls. Something in my chest did a thing I refused to examine. Tell him, I started. From above us, a single sharp bang, then silence. Go. I went. The hotel room was clean and quiet and smelled of nothing, which after 6 days of sandalwood and sea felt like sensory deprivation. I sat on the bed with the envelope in my hands, and I thought about everything I should do next. Call a doma, call the hospital, eat something, sleep, reconstruct a normal life around the strange, jagged shape of the last week. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Korean. I answered. The situation is resolved, Siak's voice. Quiet, tight with something pain, probably. He had torn at least one repaired muscle. I was willing to bet my license on it. Are you safe? I'm at a hotel. I paused. Are you safe? A short silence. Yes. You're lying. I'll see a doctor. Siak. Zola. Something in his voice, underneath the control, underneath all the architecture he had built around himself, raw and careful and real. I told you I would take you home. You sent Chansu instead. I sent Chansu first, a breath. I will still take you home if you'll let me. I looked out the window at Busan's glittering, indifferent skyline, the port lights, the bridge spanning the black water, the city that had been mine for 3 years and had become something different in the last 6 days. Home to the hotel, I said carefully, or home to Ghana. A pause that lasted exactly long enough. Wherever you want, he said. I'm in the business of settling debts. This isn't a debt. No, he said quietly, it is. I pressed the phone against my ear, and I thought about a man in a dark alley who had said please with his life running out through his hands. I thought about mornings in a garden, mountains, the particular sound of a voice that has forgotten how to ask for things, remembering. You'll need your wound redressed, I said finally. Properly, by an actual medical professional. I know a nurse. She charges extra for house calls. I'll pay whatever she asks. Outside. Busan shimmered on its dark water, enormous and unknowing. I thought about my mother, who had taught me that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act within it. I thought about how every irrevocable thing in my life had begun with a choice I made before I was fully ready. Tell me where you are, I said. This is not the ending you expected. It is the only honest one. Some doors, once opened from the inside, cannot be relocked, not because you've lost the key, but because you've stopped wanting to use it.
Thank you for watching. Every story leaves something behind. Fragmented Rain is where the next one begins. New stories every week. Please subscribe for more.